Eagles might finally be making up their mind about who they're going to hire as their defensive coordinator, as Sean Desai is going to go ahead and have a second interview with Philadelphia today. Also, DeVonta Smith, he was seen in a walking boot at a Sixers game. The Cardinals could be looking for James Bradberry as a free agent target. And finally, Adam Thielen, why I think he's perfect for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm Thomas Mott. This is the Thomas Mott Show. What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here. Welcome to the Thomas Mott Show on a Monday. It is NFL Combine Week, and yet Philadelphia still doesn't have a defensive coordinator or an offensive coordinator, at least as of filming this show early on a Monday morning. But they do have another finalist who's in his second interview today. That is Sean Desai, formerly of the Bears, currently of the Seattle Seahawks, or I guess formerly of the Seattle Seahawks. He is interviewing for a second time with Philadelphia today for their defensive coordinator role. Here is the report from Philly Voice. Some interesting stuff here on Desai and why I think maybe he's the answer for defensive coordinator. Who knows? Quote, Philadelphia Eagles will be hosting Seattle Seahawks associate head coach and defensive assistant Sean Desai for a second interview for their vacant defensive coordinator position, according to a report from Ian Rappaport and Mike Garfolo of the NFL Network. So the tweet there from Ian Rappaport. Philly Voice goes on to say, Vic Fangio consulted for the Eagles in 2022, and he might be the Eagles defensive coordinator right now if the Eagles hadn't made a run at the Super Bowl. With Fangio landing a defensive coordinator job in Miami, while the Eagles' playoff run continued, the Eagles have seemingly turned their interest to other coaches who have learned from him. As Rappaport notes, Desai worked for Fangio from 2015 to 2018, his career path via Wikipedia. Temple, so some Philadelphia tie right there as a defensive and special teams coach. Miami, Florida, Boston College, Chicago Bears defensive quality control coach, Bears safeties coach, Bears defensive coordinator for 1 year, and we'll talk about how he was okay whenever he was at that point. And then Seattle, obviously right now, with the associate head coach and defensive assistant. Now, in Desai's low season as Chicago's defensive coordinator, the Bears finished 6th in yards allowed, 22 in points allowed, and 13 in defensive DVOA, end quote. And so I told you yesterday I thought they would have the answer today, and they might still have that, but seemingly maybe tomorrow will be the day they announce their offensive defensive coordinator. I'm very certain that Brian Johnson is the OC. He's been selected. They're just going to announce him whenever they announce the defensive coordinator, and maybe it is Desai versus Dennard Wilson, but it is interesting that they just haven't given the job to Dennard Wilson. That would tell you they don't feel as confident in Wilson as a lot of us thought that they would. I've told you for weeks now, I think Dennard Wilson is likely the guy they're going to promote, but maybe, just maybe, being that closely attached to the Jonathan Gannon tree, as he kind of is, being a Jonathan Gannon assistant, really turned Philadelphia off after what they saw in the Super Bowl and his defensive system getting absolutely obliterated. Hence, Desai kind of being waltzed in here as a possible replacement option, and I think you can take two things away from Desai. One, they obviously love Vic Fangio. That was very easily noticed in the Philly Voice article. They wanted to hire him. Now they're trying to get the next best thing. That's very, very clear. And two, you can't take his 1 year as defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears as an indicator of how good of a defensive coordinator, how bad of a defensive coordinator he could be. Yes, he did finish 6th in yards, 22 in points allowed, and 13 in defensive DVOA, but the Bears defense had no special talent at all. And so you go, oh, well, maybe with a talented team, he could be a much better defensive coordinator. Here's the honest truth when you watch anybody talk about who the Eagles are going to hire for both offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. We have no idea if they're going to be good or not. We had no idea if Jonathan Gannon was going to be good or not as defensive coordinator. No idea if Nick Sirianni was going to be a good head coach. No idea if Shane Steichen was going to be a good offensive coordinator. You can look at where they have been, the success they've had at those positions, but these young guys, and Desai is, less than 40 years old, you really won't know until you get them in the building. And so I can say, sure, I don't mind having him. I like the Vic Fangio connection, but I have no idea if he is going to be good or not. I just know it's a second interview, meaning it's probably a finalist interview, meaning we should be getting an answer either this afternoon, which we'll have a show on, subscribe for that, or, of course, maybe tomorrow. I can't see them waiting past tomorrow because the Combine is Wednesday, and those guys need to be at the Combine, or at least watching it, figuring out who we're going to be future Eagles via the draft. So thumbs up that I admit when I'm wrong, because I thought it was going to be today. Maybe it still will be, but so far it's not. And thumbs up for obviously having a decision on this very, very soon. Okay. I want to quickly announce this before we go ahead and move on. The new show, every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. here on the Thomas Mott Show. I will be going live with Josh Davis of the Philly Special Show and hang out with you guys for at least an hour taking your questions. I wanted to do a live show weekly, and I've tried to do it consistently, but it's tough. And by yourself, you can only talk about so many things. But Josh Davis, brand new channel, the Philly Special Show, absolutely fantastic. Go sub to him. Link down below in the description box. Him and myself will be doing a live show every single week, foreseeably on a Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So get ready for the one 1 this Wednesday. We want as many people to join as possible, answer your questions. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, a couple of little news and notes as we keep going on here. DeVonta Smith was in a walking boot. This is interesting. Bleeding Green Nation has the write-up. You see it on your screen from the Sixers. He was ringing the bell at the Sixers game the other night. But here's the kind of quote. Smith left the locker room after the loss to the Chiefs wearing a boot. There's no reason to believe the injury will limit his ability to participate in the offseason program. The presence of the boot means it's a situation worth watching as the offseason continues to unfold. So there's obviously no need to panic here, but he's in a boot. And if he wasn't in a boot, we wouldn't be having this story right now. And so while this is interesting, the fact he's still in a boot 2 weeks after the Super Bowl, it is something to keep an eye on as you expect Smith to start working out with Jalen Hurts at some point this offseason. And the hope is, and really not that big of a fear, but the idea is that, well, let's just make sure that the boot is off and that he's fine. They can't tell us anything regarding his injury because he's not in the season, so they're not going to announce anything, but he was in a boot, and you guys need to know these things, and so there's your picture of Smitty in a boot. Okay, other news here. This is going around a lot on Twitter that the Cardinals are eyeing James Bradberry. ProFootballRumors.com has this one, and this makes perfect sense here. Quote, Jonathan Gannon has been head coach in Arizona for just under 2 weeks now, and already is looking to bring along a former player from his Eagles' 2022 defense. According to freelance journalist and former Cardinals staff writer Mike Jurecki, who I actually have talked to before, good guy. Jurecki reports the Eagles cornerback James Bradberry, currently set to hit free agency at the start of the new league year, is firmly on the Cardinals' radar. And quote, this would make a ton of sense because obviously Bradberry and Jonathan Gannon worked together in Philadelphia, and Bradberry had a lot of success in Jonathan Gannon's defense. Now, this is not necessarily big news for Philadelphia. We expect James Bradberry to most likely walk in free agency due to the fact he's going to sign a big-time contract this offseason, and the Cardinals have big-time money to do so. But this kind of further moves the snowball effect along of Bradberry signs somewhere else, and the Eagles got to figure out cornerback. And there's one of three options, right? Go to free agency, go to the draft where we think that they will, or elevate Zach McPherson, who all of us agree probably isn't ready unless the coaches know something that we don't. But this is the first domino to fall. Keep an eye on Bradberry to the Cardinals. There will be other teams interested as well. I would bet Atlanta makes a run at Bradberry as they need cornerback help, and they have lots of money to do so. Okay, final story here before we go ahead and end for the day. You guys are always in my comment section asking about different players the Eagles could sign. I saw Bobby Wagner's name pop up a couple of days ago. I was asked about Derrick Henry. I've been asked about, wide receivers. I've been asked about running backs. And listen, we can talk about each and every person you guys asked me about. But I was thinking, okay, what's a name for wide receiver 3? Talked about the Quez Watkins trade yesterday. If you missed that show, check it out on my channel. Who would be a legit option that, 1, could make a lot of sense, and 2, be really good? And then Adam Thielen, this story popped up about him possibly being a cap casualty. By no means a guarantee, but if Thielen hit the open market, I would be fascinated about him as being the wide receiver 3, because there are 2 ways to go, right? Either you go to the draft and get some young gun to bring up behind A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith, a fine idea. Some of you guys like Greg Ward, and that's fine. I'm not a massive Greg Ward fan, but that's, he did have some good games with Carson Wentz in the past. And the other option is to go get a veteran in free agency. And while Thielen, again, has not hit free agency yet, he's not been officially cut. If he is, this could make a bunch of sense. Here's Pro Football Talk. Quote, the Vikings have to make some moves before the start of the league year just to get under the salary cap, and wide receiver Adam Thielen's $19.97 million cap hit, jeez, is the second highest in the team behind only Kirk Cousins. Means Thielen's contract is under scrutiny. Thielen acknowledged today in an interview with Pat McAfee the Vikings want to restructure his deal for his 2023 salary of $11.8 million becomes fully guaranteed. It's a little interesting, Thielen said. We're working through some stuff, but I've got big cap hit. My contract fully guarantees, I think, on March 16th. Thielen restructured his contract a year ago to give the Vikings some cap relief in 2022, but that increased his cap number in 2023. He did not commit to any kind of agreement to restructure his contract or take a pay cut this year, and it's unclear just how close he and the Vikings are working through a new deal, or that Thielen might go elsewhere this year, end quote. Now, I know the comments are going to say he's too old, he's often injured, he might be too expensive, blah, 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 but they got to restructure him. $19 million for your third wide receiver is not going to make a bunch of sense, and so if they are unable to, they could cut him, and if he is cut, his value in the open market, being often injured and, the wrong side of the age number, could be between $5, $6, $7 million a year, and I think Philadelphia could be in the game for that if all the rest of the restructuring works out. And Philadelphia, as of yet, has not signed Jalen Hurts. They've not done any sort of contract restructuring, and so we continue to wait for money to free up. But I do think a veteran as your third wide receiver could make a bunch of sense. I'm not arguing for veteran versus draft pick. I think either one works. But you talk about A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith getting the bulk of catches. All you would need Thielen to do is catch 30, maybe 40 balls a year, all of which will be from the slot, all of which will be on one-on-one opportunities, and all of which will be against the opposing team's third best cover corner or safety. it makes a bunch of sense. I'm not fully guaranteeing that this is even going to even be a remote possibility because you got to cut him first, but you guys like names. Let's put a name on your radar here. Adam Thielen, write it down. Maybe it makes sense. Maybe it does not. Okay, again, this week is going to be very important because I do expect the coordinators to go any day now, any hour now. I'm checking Twitter like religiously right now at this point on a Monday. I expect the Hurts contract. You remember that report saying it would come before the Combine? The Combine's Wednesday, so things are going to continue to happen. Be sure to subscribe down below. And a lot of you people who are, a lot of guys who are subscribed don't watch every single show, and so I think you miss it in your subscription box, so hit the notification bell. That way it notifies you whenever we drop a new show. So up to you. Would love you if you would do that. Appreciate you guys every single day. Close to 10K. Keep subscribing. I'm Thomas Mott. This is the Thomas Mott Show.